The latest measurement of poverty in America was released today by the U.S. Census Bureau, and the news was headed in the wrong direction.
A kid in Texas is filling a bucket with water right now, not at a campsite, at home. We're going inside towns that advocates and officials have called third world conditions, right here inside U.S. borders. And the place you're picturing right now is probably wrong. One of these places will surprise you completely. It's not the one you're already thinking of. Stay with me to the end. Here's a word most Americans have never heard: colonias. It means neighborhoods in Spanish. Along the Texas border, it means something darker. Developers began building these settlements back in the 1950s. They bought cheap land near the border, land that floods, land nobody else wanted. They cut it into tiny lots. They sold those lots to immigrant families. They made one big promise: water is coming, power is coming, roads are coming. Decades later, more than 500,000 Texans still live in colonias today. Many still lack reliable water, sewer lines, or other basic infrastructure. Texas alone has more than 1,400 of these communities, and similar settlements exist in New Mexico, Arizona, and California too. Some colonia residents are recent arrivals. Many others are U.S.-born, raised just blocks from where their parents first settled. Some of these households still don't have safe water coming out of the tap. The documented health record here is rough. Researchers have linked poor sanitation in colonias to higher rates of hepatitis A, dysentery, salmonellosis, cholera, and tuberculosis in border counties. Diseases most American households haven't worried about in decades. For some families, that means boiling well water on a stove just to make it usable. It can mean driving to a gas station, jugs in the trunk, because the tap at home runs nothing but air and rust. In some areas, the power line that was promised decades ago still hasn't arrived. Reports on colonias have tracked this exact pattern for years: promised utilities, partial progress, and entire blocks still left waiting. A local official in El Paso once described families living in conditions advocates have called third world, with a modern city only a few miles away. A few miles, not a few hundred. Many colonia lots were originally sold through a financing method known as contract for deed, where buyers make payments for years without holding clear legal title to the land. That arrangement has made it harder for some residents to qualify for loans that could pay for water or sewer hookups, even decades after moving in. State and federal programs have funded improvements in some colonias over the years, but with well over 1,000 of these communities along the border, progress has been slow and uneven. That's strike one. Strike two covers far more ground than Texas does, literally. The Navajo Nation spans parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, covering a larger land area than the entire state of West Virginia. About 1 in 3 Navajo households lacks running water. Not low pressure, none at all. Some families load empty barrels into a truck and drive long distances, sometimes dozens of miles, just to reach a watering point or a store. That trip is how some households get water for washing, cooking, or basic sanitation that day. This isn't an old photo from a museum exhibit. Right now, while you're watching this video, someone on the Navajo Nation is making a version of that same drive for a barrel of water. Federal data has also tracked a related gap on the same reservation: thousands of homes still without grid electricity at all, layering a second basic infrastructure problem directly on top of the water shortage. 2 problems, 1 household, neither one solved by the other. The legal picture here is genuinely unsettled. The Supreme Court ruled the federal government isn't required to secure water specifically for the Navajo Nation in one major case, but broader disputes over water rights and infrastructure funding are still playing out in courts today. Now here's the one example that breaks the pattern you think you already understand. Jackson, Mississippi isn't some tiny dot on a map nobody's heard of. It's the capital. Over 100,000 people call it home. In 2022, a severe crisis left much of the city without reliable running water, exposing decades of patched, underfunded infrastructure all at once. Pipes that should have been replaced years earlier finally gave out in one bad week. Kids went to school and drank from bottled water because the fountains weren't considered safe. Hospitals leaned on backup tanks to keep equipment running. Restaurants shut their doors for days because they couldn't legally wash a dish. A capital city in the richest country on the planet running on bottled water and backup tanks. The system came under federal court supervision, with an interim manager appointed to run day-to-day operations. Federal agencies provided emergency funding, and the case has continued through federal court action ever since, including later fights over whether the state should take back control. Jackson has continued to face water system challenges after 2022. The underlying pipes are still old, and old pipes don't fix themselves overnight. You'd think this only happens in poor, struggling states. You'd be wrong again. California's Central Valley is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the United States, sitting inside one of the richest states in the country. During drought years, some small communities here have watched household wells run dry. Families relied on bottled water deliveries just to get through the day. In some of these same places, irrigated agriculture kept pulling water even as nearby domestic wells failed. Same region, same dry years, very different outcomes for the people living closest to each other. Some of these towns are home to the very farm workers who pick the food that ends up in supermarkets nationwide. They grow the food. They haven't always had reliable, clean water while doing it. The same hands filling your grocery cart sometimes go home to an empty one. And just when you think you've seen the worst of it, there's one more place. This one isn't a desert, and it isn't a border town. It's coal country. Parts of Appalachia, including stretches of Kentucky and West Virginia, sit on some of the richest coal seams in the world. For generations, that coal helped power homes across the country. In some specific coal-affected communities, old mining runoff has left streams stained orange, a documented sign of acid mine drainage. In a number of these places, that contamination has reached local water systems too. It isn't every town in the region, but it's a real recurring problem in the ones it does hit. In places where it happens, families keep bottled water by the door, the same way a Colonia family in Texas might, or a family on the Navajo Nation. Coal country, desert, border town, the bottled water shelf by the front door doesn't care which one you're from. So if it's not just one region and it's not just one cause, what actually connects all of this? Here's where every thread you just heard finally ties together. Here's the honest version, not the dramatic one. Funding has mattered in every one of these places, but governance, jurisdiction, and political neglect have shaped outcomes just as much as the money did. Many colonias are unincorporated, with a limited local tax base, which can leave them outside normal city utility coverage entirely. The Navajo Nation's water crisis sits inside an unresolved legal fight over who is actually responsible for securing water rights and funding infrastructure. Jackson is a majority black city in a state where decisions about water system investment and control were central to how the crisis unfolded. In parts of California, water access and governance can depend on ownership, district boundaries, and long-standing legal arrangements that don't always favor the people living closest to the tap. Coal communities in Appalachia, meanwhile, often sit far from the state capitals that control their water funding, in counties with shrinking populations and shrinking tax revenue to match. 5 regions, 5 decades, one pattern underneath all of it. Swap the state, swap the decade, and the root cause barely changes shape. The infrastructure gap was never simply about whether the money existed somewhere. It was about whether anyone with power was forced to direct it toward these specific communities. That's a harder problem than writing a check, and it's the reason none of this got fixed decades ago when the money was already on the table. So next time somebody says Third World America, don't just picture one broken-down shack in one forgotten state. Picture a neighborhood a few miles from a glittering skyline. Picture a reservation larger than an entire state, still caught in an unresolved legal fight over water. Picture a state capital that needed federal court intervention just to keep its taps running. Picture a farm region where irrigated fields kept running while the household next door went dry. Picture a coal town that lit furnaces and factories for a century, still checking its own water before letting a kid drink it. One repeating question runs under all of it. Who gets prioritized and who doesn't? The answer rarely shows up in a press release. It shows up in whose pipes get fixed first and whose keep waiting another decade. That kid with the bucket, 10 miles away, a backyard pool just sat there, full to the top, and nobody even used it today.